वैदिकदशशान्तिमन्त्राः। ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु
ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। चैतन्यं सर्वगं सर्वं सर्वभूतगुहाशयम् यत्सर्वविषयातीतं तस्मै सर्वविदे नमः। We are reviewing the verses, which, last 10-20 verses. Here, one of the important things to note is that the author has introduced the concept of Chidabhasa, which is not new to us, but must have been new when it was introduced here. Because all along the teacher shows the need, the necessity of having this entity called Chidabhasa. Then alone you can explain the teaching of Tattvamasi. Then alone you can explain the knowledge of Aham Brahmasmi. All that Vyavahara would be possible only when there is an entity called Chidabhasa. What is Chidabhasa? The Chit of the consciousness, Abhasa reflected in the Aham Vritti. Call it Ahankara, Jivatma, Chidabhasa. So who is Samsari? Chidabhasa is a Samsari. Samsari must be a live entity. It cannot be consciousness, although consciousness is live, because consciousness is ever free, immutable, changeless. It cannot be mere Aham Vritti, which could be limited, which is limited, but which is unconscious. Therefore, Aham Vritti with reflected consciousness, there is limitation also, there is the ignorance also, and there is the reception of the Upadesha also. So, Chaitanya kalpyate phalam. Who receives the phala of the Upadesha that Tattvamasi, you are Sadasi, immediately it is Chidabhasa that receives the phalam, Aham Sat, Sadasmi. But ultimately, that phalam goes to what is the essential nature of Chidabhasa, which is consciousness of Chit. Chaitanya kalpyate phalam. Therefore, Chaitanya or Chit or consciousness or Atma becomes the ultimate recipient of the phalam of liberation and freedom. Kutastevi phalam yogyam. How can there be phalam? Because for one to be recipient of an advantage, there must be bhoktritva. The recipient must be bhokta. Kutastevi phalam yogyam. Consciously, Kutastha doesn't have kartritva, bhoktritva. How can it be bound and liberated? Rajaniyava jayadikam. Just as it is the army of the king that fights the battle and wins the battle, but it is Raja or king that gets the benefit. He is said to have won the battle. So also it is Chaitanya who is said to have gained the fruit of liberation. Shuddhasya pramatritvam nasti. Shuddha Chaitanya cannot be pramata, the knower in primary sense. So it was said that Chidabhasa is knower in primary sense. The phalam of Chidabhasa ultimately lends into the true nature of Chidabhasa, that is Chaitanya. Vastutastu chit pravimasya eva supadi vyaparana swatmanadhyasthena vidyate eva pramatritvam. In reality, it is chit pratibimbatvena, it is the Chidabhasa, that is where the pramatritvam is, the primary sense. And so, chidat eva avikritasya pravimbhava nibandaha. Through that, the Chaitanya, in fact, gains the designation of pramata. So, ultimately, even though Chidabhasa is pramata in the primary sense, but ultimately it is the Chidatma that gains the designation pramata. So, phala sambandha. So, you have to connect the phala with the bhokta or pramata. And the Chaitanya is ultimate pramata, and therefore phalam or liberation ultimately gets connected to Chaitanya. Adashastu yadavaso mukhakara sevasaha yathaivam pratyadarshaha yadavasas tadahyaham. Adarsastu yada mukhakara, in adarsha of the mirror, the abhasa that you see is nothing but the mukhakara, your own face is what is there. And so the grivastha mukham, the head which is on this neck and the head which is there in the mirror are not different. Meaning that when you see the reflection, you do not get the idea as a reflection, you get the idea that it is myself. Evam pratyadarsho yadavasa tadahyaham. Similarly, in aham buddhi, the abhasa which is there called chidavasa, when you look at that, then you know that is I. So even when you are looking at the reflection, the pratyaya or the cognition or the determination that is born in you is that it is I. And so also when you are looking at Chidavasa, reflected consciousness, aham vritti, then also the idea generated is that I am bound, I am liberated. Ityavam pratipatya syad sadasmi iti chana. This is a way that only sadasmi is pratipatti or knowledge can take place. In no other way. Tattva upadesha vai dvar abhava, that because tattvamasi upadesha requires a dvaram, a medium which is a chidavasa. Through that it is a chidatma. So chidatma primary cannot be the recipient of upadesha. Chidabhasa is primarily, but then when I look at the abhasa reflection, I know it is myself. And so what happens to Chidabhasa ultimately happens to Chit, because Chit, when it sees, it is nothing but myself. So dvara bhava, therefore there must be dvara, or a medium or a nimitta or a gateway for the knowledge to take place in Chaitanyam, or Chaitanya to feel liberated. Shrutusyad upadeshasyet arthatvam tatha bhavet. If there is Shrota When Upadesha becomes meaningful when there is Shrota or listener. So if the listener is a Chidamasa listener. If listener is not there, then when you say you are Brahman, then who will respond to that? And therefore, Chidamasa is the one, he is a Shrota. तारे जो तू जज है तारे बेसाड़े लागे जे पेला है अध्यक्षस्य न चेदिष्टम Adhyaksha or the witness or consciousness is immutable, changeless, therefore cannot be a Shrota in a primary sense. So if Adhyaksha or Sakshi or consciousness cannot be the Shrota, there has to be a Shrota because the Upadesha is given. Somebody said, you are Brahman, and then somebody responds to that, he is a Vakta, the Guru, and Shrota, the Shishya. Then only the Upadesha becomes meaningful when there is Shrota. So who can be Shrota? Only this Chidavasa can be the Shrota. And through him the Adhyaksha or the Sakshi gets the result. Adhyakshasya samipe syat buddhere vedi chenmatam. Adhyakshasya samipe syat. Suppose you don't accept Chidabhasa. Adhyaksha means the Sakshi, the witness, the consciousness. And Buddhi becomes the recipient of the reflection of consciousness because Buddhi is in the vicinity of the consciousness. Therefore, the result of the Buddhi being Buddhi or Ahamvritti being in the proximity of consciousness is that it becomes the recipient of the reflection of consciousness. But you say, why do you need reflection? Buddhi is in the vicinity of consciousness, and isn't that enough for Buddhi to become the Shrota? Natat krit upakarosti. That Buddhi which is just is in the vicinity cannot, unless an upakara is there. What is upakara? Something happens to Buddhi. Buddhi is always there, but only when in the presence of consciousness Buddhi becomes enlivened. It no more remains unconscious, becomes enlivened, and there will become the Shrota and the Karta, Bhokta, whatever. Then only that Buddhi will benefit. So then alone the Buddhi will have serve a purpose, a role. Kastha advat nakalpyate. Otherwise, Buddhi remains what it is, which is unconscious. Like a caste also, in vicinity of consciousness, many things are there. The whole universe is in vicinity of consciousness because consciousness is all pervasive. And a Buddhi also doesn't receive Vishesha, then anything without receiving Vishesha. A Buddhi can be knower, then the caste also enjoys the proximity of consciousness. It should also respond. Difference between caste and the Buddhi is that Buddhi has a nature that it gets enlivened in the presence of consciousness, whereas caste or anything else does not. Therefore, you have to accept that something happens to Buddhi in presence of consciousness, which imparts a special aspect to the Buddhi, Visheshata, which is how the Buddhi then is able to receive the Upadesha and benefit from the Upadesha. And that is that something happens to Buddhi in the vicinity of consciousness, and that is that Buddhi is the recipient of the refraction of consciousness. Buddho chetat krutas kaschin nanu evam parinamita. Buddho chetat krutah kaschit. The question is, if in presence of consciousness buddhi becomes enlivened, would it not be that also brings about a change in consciousness? So if something happens to buddhi enlivenment, wouldn't it not bring about some kind of a change in consciousness also? Nanu evam parinamita, in that case the consciousness becomes also parinami, meaning undergoes a change. Doesn't have to. What we are saying is the presence of consciousness is enough to enliven the buddhi. But if you think that, why doesn't consciousness enliven everything? So that consciousness enlivens buddhi must be that consciousness also undergoes some kind of change for buddhi to be enlivened. Will it not be? Does buddhi get enlivened without any change in consciousness, or it gets enlivened with some change in consciousness? If you think that consciousness also should undergo some change or modification for the buddhi to get enlivened, then parinamita, consciousness also will be parinami, would also get, undergo change or transformation. So if you thus are willing to accept the parinama in consciousness, then why don't you accept the abhasa? Then consciousness remains aparinami and then abhasa undergoes the change. Abhasa ko dosha sati shrutyadi Shruti talks about abhasa. Rupam pratirupo babhuva. Kathopanishad says and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says that it assumes the same form, like fire assumes the form of the combustible substance. Ekadha bahudha cheva drishyate jalachandravat. Just as the moon appears to be one or many, so also the Atma appears depending on upadhis, one or many. Meaning that this is the reflection accepted by the Shruti also. And what's your problem? Avase parinamasche narajvadinivatvat. Avase parinamasche. When consciousness gets reflected in the buddhi or ahamvritti, then would not consciousness undergo some change for the reflection to take place? No, not really. How? Rajvadi nibatvavata. Just as a Rajju appears as a snake. So Rajju shines as a snake without undergoing any kind of change. Endeavor to shine as something else, one need not undergo a change, just as Rajju does not undergo change to appear as a snake. Sarapadesha tatho vocham adarshecha mukhatvavata. Sarapade. So when Rajvadi appears as Sarpadi, there is no change at all in the Rajju because it is a superimposition. It is mithya. Is an appearance. If the Sarpa had some reality, then of course a Rajju would have to undergo some change. Sarpa has no reality whatever. Adarshecha mukhatvavat. We said that there is a reflection in the mirror without the face undergoing any change. For the face to be reflected in the mirror, the face does not need to change at all, undergo any change. Face just by being there gets reflected in the mirror. The rope just by being there appears as a snake. And consciousness just by being there gets reflected in ahamvritti. Natma abhaso siddhischet atmano grahanat prathak mukhadesha prathak siddhi yatvanyanya samshraya. अहंक्रियव आत्मत्वम इति मन्यमानस्य चिन्निभत्वम मन्यमानः तस्य चिन्निभत्वम आक्षिपति. The word somebody says ahankar itself is Atma. Tasya chinnibhatvam. How does that ahankara shine as conscious entity? Like the snake shines, so how does ahankara shine? Cannot. No atma avasto siddhischet atmano grahanat prasaka. आत्मनः केवलस्य ग्रहणात् अभासनात् पुरुषगेव आत्माभासस्य आत्माभासत्वस्य सिद्धिश्चेत्. The Atmabhasa, reflection of Atma, can take place without the Atma, without knowing the Atma, without, still that can take place. Siddhischet na bhavet. So, merely by being Atma there, if the reflection doesn't take place, avāsa avāsenaiva atmabhaso bhavet. How do you say that Atma shines? Because the reflection shines. That Atma is consciousness, self-shining, is determined by the reflection which shines. And why does the reflection shine? Because Atma shines. That Atma is consciousness is determined by reflection shining. And reflection shines because Atma is shining as consciousness. Meaning to determine that Chaitanya or Atma is consciousness, you require reflection. And for reflection to shine, you require Atma. This is called Anyonyashraya. Tadeva Vishayatayati Shrodussyat Upadeshaschet Arthavatvam Tatha Bhavet Adhyakshasya Chane Chedishtam Shrutrutam Kasya Tad Bhavet. इत्येवं प्रतिपत्ति स्यात् सदस्मीति च नान्यथा तत्त्वविदुपदेशवि द्वारभावात् अनर्थकः. अयं पक्ष आदरणीय है. इत्येवं प्रतिपत्ति स्यात् सदस्मीति च नान्यथा. एवं सति चिदाभास विभग में सति सदस्मी 116 we are. Oh, sorry, I'm going back. That's what I read. Adhyakshasya pratak siddhau avasasya tadiyata. Avasa tadiyatve hi adhyaksha vyatiriktata. Okay. So the Purvapakshi is clarifying the Anyonya Ashraya. Adhyakshasya pratak siddhau avasasya tadiyata. If Adhyaksha is there, then only Avasa can appear like Adhyaksha. Avasasya tadiyatve, only when Avasa reflection is similar to Adhyaksha, then Adhyaksha is different. Meaning the Adhyaksha is established because of the similarity of Avasa, Ava is established because of the similarity of Adhyaksha. The Anyonya Ashraya is clarified by the Purvapakshi. So, point is that Adhyaksha or the consciousness, Chidatma, cannot be independently established. Unless you see the reflection, how do you say there is face? Because there is reflection, therefore there is face. But why is there reflection? Because there is face. Face is there because reflection is because face is. How do you say faces? Because reflection is there, therefore faces. This is how he argues to say that this is Anyonya Ashraya. But this presumes that the reflection and the face enjoy the same degree of reality. If that is so, then it requires a reflection to establish existence of face, require a face to establish. If Anyonyasa requires that both of them enjoy the same degree of reality. Face is Satyam and reflection is Mithya. Therefore, Satyam does not require Mithya to be there to establish itself. Mithya requires Satyam to establish itself to be there. तथा अहमिति प्रतीयमानः अहंकृत्यात्मकैव चेतना आत्मा इति युक्तमिति अभिप्रायः. And therefore, best thing is that aham vritti is atma. Ahankrityatmaka eva chetana atma. There is no atma other than the ahankruti. So, the ahankara, which enlivened ahankara alone is atma. You do not require a consciousness other than aham vritti. What we say is that the atma becomes reflected in aham vritti, that's called chidabhasa. He says, why don't you say that aham vritti, the enlivened aham vritti itself is atma? Why do you think that there is a reflected consciousness and then there is consciousness and stuff like that? So, why not say that aham vritti itself is atma? That aham vritti by nature is conscious. Here you are going two steps. Aham vritti is unconscious or achetana. And therefore, you imagine the existence of Atma, that is Chetana, and that Chetana Atma imparts Chetanatvam to Aham Vritti. That's Aham Vritti becomes enlivened. This is what you say. We say that Aham Vritti itself is Chetanam and that itself is Atma. Why do you need an Atma other than the conscious Aham Vritti? You follow the argument. So therefore now we should establish the separateness of Atma from Aham Vritti. In waking state they don't seem to be separate. Because what we experience is Aham Vritti, which enliven Aham Vritti, and that is what we take as Atma. And he says that is Atma. Why do you need to imagine some other consciousness different from this? Therefore, aham krityatmakasya antahkaranasya swapne drishyatvaina vyavasthitatvat. What happens in swapna? In swapna, that antahkarana. What is ahankara? Ahankara is the modification of antahkarana. In the dream, it is very clear that antahkarana is object and Atma is subject. The subject-object duality is very clear in dream. If it is not clear in a waking state, in dream it is very clear. Swapne dushyattvini vyavasthitatvat, because in dream, antahkarana, which itself takes the form of ahankara, is very clearly known as drishyam. Because what is dream? Nothing but modification of antahkarana. So in the dream you are aware of the dream world. The dream world is nothing but antahkarana which has become the dream world, so it is very clear from the experience of a dream that antahkarana is illuminated by Atma, is object of Atma. And there is a witness because of which you know that dream world is there, antahkarana is there. Therefore, that difference, the separateness of the drishya which is antahkarana and drashta which is Atma is very clear in dream. In case it is not clear to you in the waking state, it is very clear in dream. Naivam, the ahankara is not Atma, swapne prasak siddhe pratyasya drishes tatha. In the dream, that the antahkarana is separate and Atma is separate is very clear in the dream. Rathades tatra shunyatvat. In the dream you see Ratha, you see the chariot and the horses and roads and stuff like that. And you know very well that there is no chariot. That means that chariot, etc., is all nothing but projection of the mind. And the fact that you see chariot, etc., in dream means that you are seeing the mind. That means in the dream, the mind is very much the object of consciousness. And the drashta is different from that. Therefore, antahkaranam is the Vishaya. It's very clear in the dream. तथा च आत्मा प्रत्यय समूलन निर्विनिर्मुक्त. In waking, what happens is that the aham vritti is never separate from consciousness and mind, never separate. In dream, that separation is clear. That antahkarana is the object and atma is subject. That is why the dream example is taken. Jagrat alochana api. Now with that understanding, if you look at the waking, it will become clear. Avagatyai samvyaptah pratyayo vishayakriti jayate sayadakara savahyo vishayo matah. So here now in the waking state, we have this triputi, the subject, object, and the cognition. So the worldly objects are the objects called Vishaya. How do you say they are Vishayas? How do you establish the existence of the Vishaya, the sense objects? Avagatyai samvyapta pratyo Vishaya kritihi. That there is a ghatakar vritti, patakar vritti, mathakar vritti, which reveals ghata, pata, matha. There is Vishayakriti. Avagatyai samvyaptaha, even when that ghatakar vritti arises, is always pervaded by or illumined by consciousness. Otherwise you would never know. In your mind, you become aware of the ghatakar vritti only when that vritti is samvyaptaha, pervaded by, illumined by consciousness. Jayate sayadakara. So therefore, this ghatakar vritti in the mind is illumined by consciousness. So in the light of consciousness, the ghatakar vritti arises. So how did that vritti get ghatakara? There must be a reason why the vritti or the mind assume the form of a ghata or a part. There must be some nimitta, some reason. And that is how it is proven that there is an object called ghata out there which is responsible for the creation or the formation of ghatakar vritti. What it is we only perceive our vrittis. We perceive ghatakar vritti, patakar vritti. So there are the Buddhists says that is all there is no ghata pata out there. But we say that what creates ghatakara, what creates different kind of akaras, unless there is a nimitta for that, that is why we say that there are external objects which are responsible for, which when perceived by sense organs, create the different forms of the vrittis. So, yadakara sabahyo vishayo matah. So whatever akara the mind takes as ghatakara, that ghata is said to be the bhakya vishaya. Karma ipsitamatvat satadvan karye niyujyate akaro yat charpyate karanam tada iha uchyate. Akara. What brings about a particular akara or ghatakara in that mind is the eyes. No doubt there is ghata out there, the mind in here, but when does the ghatakar vritti take place? When the eyes come in contact with the ghata, then the mind assumes the ghatakara. So this is the karanam. Sense organ is the karanam. So sense object is Vishaya, sense organ is karanam. Yada bhasa samvyapta sajñāteti nigadyate. So jnanam, jneyam, and then jnata. So sajñāta iti nigadyate. The one whose consciousness illumines that ghatakar vritti is the jnata. So one who illumines that ghatakar vritti is jnata. The ghatakar vritti is the ghata is a vishaya, and that because of which ghatakar vritti takes place in eyes is the karana. So karta, karma, karanam, or jnata, jnaya, jnanam. So the basic lesson is given here. Trayameta vichatra yo janati sa atmavita. The one who knows all the three. So apparently the jnata, jnaya, jnanam, all of these are also illumined by something. Why do we say that? Because each one of them enjoys the same degree of reality. Jnata is there because jnayam is there. Jnayam is there because jnata is there. Therefore jnanam is there. So jnata, jnanam, jnaya, all of these enjoy the same degree of reality, which is vyavaharika sattva or mithya, and therefore we accept they are all illumined by someone that is different from them. Trayameta vichatra yo janati sa atmavit, one who knows these three, the witness of the three, who knows that I am the drashta illumining these three, I am the conscious illumining the jnata, jnaya, jnayam, jnanam, atmavit, he is the knower of Atma. So jnata, jnaya, jnanam, all these three shine in whose consciousness? That consciousness, Atma. Whose consciousness or consciousness? We had come up to this point. So the last line on page 375 says, Etatrayam jnata jnanam jnayam cheti vivichya asadharanyena avagamya. Vivichya means what? Distinguishing. That this is jnata, this is jnanam, this is jnayam. So there are no doubt all the thoughts, but there is something that is different in them. There is something common. But then their forms are different, therefore asadharanyena avagamya. Whatever is not common in them, that is what distinguishes them. So jnata, jnayam, jnanam, these three are distinguished by the specific forms that they have. And therefore the wise person knows all of them. He illumines all of them. He knows himself as different from all of them. Attatraye paraspara apeksha siddhike. See, as far as these three are concerned, jnata, jnayam, jnanam, paraspara apeksha siddhike. The jnata can be there only when the jnayam is there and jnanam is there. Jnanam can be there when jnata is there and jnaya is there. And jnaya is established to be there only when jnata is there, jnanam is there. Attatraye paraspara apeksha siddhike. These three are dependent upon each other for establishing their existence or their being. Jnata cannot be unless jnayam and jnanam is there, and so on and so forth. Agama payini. Now what happens is, when one depends upon the other, that means one is not independent. Each one of them depends upon each other. That means none of them is independent. That means they are all mortal. Because of whom they are there, if that is not there, then all these three enjoy only dependent satta. Agama payini. Also then they are coming and going, you know that, the jnata, jnaya, jnanam, they keep coming and going. Agama payini. Paraspara apeksha siddhike. Agama payini. Vartmanam. Swata Siddham. Then all these three are interdependent. When that is the case, Vartamanam Swata Siddham. So these three are subject to coming, going, and interdependent. With that, there is something different. Swata Siddham. There is something that is Swata Siddham, meaning that self-existing. That consciousness is subject to the Atma, the Adhyaksha, the witness, which does not require any of them to be there. It is there whether those entities are there or not. These three cannot be there unless they are illuminated by the Adhyaksha. Adhyaksha is there whether they are there or not. Therefore, Agamapayani Vartamanam Swata Siddham. See, when all of these Paraspara Apeksha Siddhike is there, there must be some Swata Siddham, ultimately. We find that something is illuminated by that is illuminated by something else, illuminated by, there must be self-illumined entity somewhere. This exists because of that, the pot exists because of clay, and clay exists because of earth, and earth exists because of molecules. I mean, thus, ultimately, you must come to something that is self-existent. So, there must be something self-existent, self-shining, that avadibhutam. When this chain of inquiry of the illumined and illuminator, every illuminator is found to be illumined also, when it's pursued, avadibhutam, where will it ultimately culminate into something that is self-effulgent? This one depends upon that to exist. Where will it culminate? Something self-existent. Therefore, Swata Siddham, when all these entities are interdependent, subject to coming and going, there is something that is not dependent, something that doesn't come and go, something that is self-existent, something that is self-shining. Tat avadibhutam anagama apai sakshinam. Sakshi is there, witness is there, that illumines them, who is anagama apai, not subject to coming and going. Yo janati. So one who knows himself as a Sakshi, who is self-existing, self-shining, and illumining all these entities which are subject to coming and going, and that I am there whether they are not or not. I am independently existing. Janati samyak avagacchati, one who knows the Sakshi very well in this manner. Saha Atmavida, he is the knower of the self. Tvampadalakshya pratyagaatmavit iti yojana. Tvampadalakshya. Tvampada is ahankara. Lakshya is the Chaitanya. That is implied by, because if you take ahankara and inquire as to what the ahankara is, you will find that ahankara also, there is an element which is conscious, an element unconscious. So if you let go what is unconscious, ultimately what remains is the self-shining, self-existing. That's called Tvampada Lakshyam. Now the Lakshya is not there, Lakshya must be there even when the Vachya is there, but part of the Vachya must be given up to arrive at the Lakshya. Iti. So meaning that from the Sakshi also, the Sakshitvam ultimately has to drop. That Sakshi also is relative to Sakshya. Who am I? I am not Sakshi. I just am, self-existing, self-shining. You give it some designation, you call it witness. You call it Atma. You call it Chaitanya, you call something. But none of that word will fill up completely. Complete describe. So each word only reveals Lakshana Bhatya. Tumudakshya Pratyagatmavit iti yojana. One who knows oneself as a witness, he is Atmavit. Taduktam Sri Bhagavate. Now that we'll see tomorrow, because there's a big footnote there. Why should he bring to Bhagavata here, out of all the places in the world? Ekam ekatar abhave yada nupalabhamahe. If you cannot get one without the other, the jnata cannot be without gnayam and, jnanam. Ekam ekatara abhave yada nupalabha. Ekatara means another one. If you cannot find or cannot see or know one without the other, Tritayam tatra yo veda. This Tritayam which is independent Tripuri. Yo veda sa atma swashraya ashraya. These are all interdependent entities, they must have an ashraya. And the ashraya must be independent. So, swashraya ashraya, he is his own ashraya. He is the self-existing. And all these, so these three themselves tell us. The relative world tells us that there must be an absolute entity. When Einstein discovered that this world is relative, there is a whole team actually there was, but that is a relative world. That whatever you see the standpoint, there is no such thing as absolute. Then there must be something absolute. So this jnata, gnayam and the jnanam, these three are all interdependent. That means there must be something that does not depend, that is independent. Tritayam tratayo veda sa atma swashraya shreha. Who is swashraya shreha? Who is independent, who doesn't depend upon anything else. He doesn't depend upon those three. Each one of those three depends upon each other, but this one doesn't. So tomorrow then we'll see that footnote on that page. We'll continue. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.